The Lakers are out. Oklahoma City, congrats. You've exceeded even Vancouver. Pau Gasol, where does he stand? Where the Lakers went wrong. A history lesson of radio in Utah on this semi-historic day. It's all up next on Tip-Off. Boom, 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 boom. Oh my gosh, getting the kids out of the house today was a disaster. Boom, boom, boom. Tears everywhere for everything. Boom, boom, boom. Daddy, nothing's going right this morning. Boom, 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 boom. Boom. Oh my gosh. So I'm recording an hour later than usual, as you can kind of probably see on YouTube from the sunlight. I usually record about 6:20 in the morning. Today I waited until my wife was driving the kids, taking my son on the field trip today, or a parent volunteering on the field trip today. Holy smokes. I don't know what it was this morning. We did have our first death in the family last night. The betta fish died. My daughter's 7 was not necessarily the most engaged parent to the betta fish until it died, and then that was really rather colossal, and then this morning was just a mess. Both kids in tears by the time they're in the car. Wife's mad at me because I probably caused it. Woo! Gotta love those mornings as a parent. And I told you yesterday, we went away to Vegas, and the in-laws are the best. My wife's parents are amazing, and they watched them for the weekend. I'm beginning to. It's the first time we've ever done that. At this moment, I'm wondering whether it was worth it. Holy smokes! So that was literally 3 minutes ago. So it's hard for me to come back around. If I understand what's going on correctly, tomorrow. Gosh, I hope I'm right on this, but I'm not entirely sure. But I believe tomorrow, from what I've read in the papers, and talked to Scotty and those guys, the 1320 KFAN and kind of as we know it disappears, and um, and then it I don't know what form it will take eventually. That's up to the ownership group of Cumulus, and I know nobody there, so I can't tell you that. And then the new version of what is being built by the Jazz, Scott Gerard, Chris Baum, and Jeremy Castro, now Randy Rogers, and the rest of the crew will take form. So I actually have been fortunate enough to kind of be at the forefront of history in sports radio, history of 1320 KFAN. So at the end of this, if you care, I'm going to actually walk kind of through how we got here, what happened, a little history lesson of sports radio in Utah on this rather monumental day. But in the meantime, Lakers are done. The Lakers, this isn't, as I've said all year, isn't surprising to me. Kobe is their main gun. He's played over 40,000 minutes. He was fabulous last night. And what happens in the NBA is that players, they don't just fall. It's not like an NFL running back or a wide receiver that just loses a step and they're done. A baseball player suddenly just can't hit anymore. What happens in the NBA is a player just slips ever so slightly, and what the slippage really is. Nasalki was kind of the first person who pointed this out to me. A guy comes in the league, he's got 78 nights out of 82 nights a year, he's got legs, and then after a few years, it drops to 72, and then it drops to 6, and then it just kind of continually drops down. And that's what we saw out of Kobe in this playoff series. He was great last night, but really because he got to the rim and he hit the 10 to 15 footer, he didn't hit the 16 footer beyond all series. He was 3 of 12 again yesterday. He no longer can break free from that shot the way he once did. He may not have the legs he once did, but he had the explosion last night, which he just hadn't had. And that's the reality of what happens as you get older. That's why no team that has ever had their main gun be over 40,000 regular season minutes has ever made a conference final. It's not they haven't made the NBA finals. They haven't made a conference final. Now, you can decide whether you think Garnett is the main gun in Boston. This year, he's closer than he has been. And they're going to make the conference final. They may even make the NBA final. He's closer this year. Generally, I think that's Rondo and Pierce's team with Garnett as a complementary piece, similar to the way that when Jabbar did it after 40,000 minutes, it was Magic and Worthy. Wilt did it. It was Goodrich and West. Oscar did it. He had Kareem. Reggie Miller made the Eastern Conference Finals, but he had World Metapiece or Ron Artest, Jermaine O'Neal, and Al Harrington at the youth of their career. That's what you have to do when you have a guy like Kobe, who's still great, but he can't carry it. And to some extent, I think that's what the Lakers tried to do, and Andrew Bynum was a failure. But even there is maybe where the failure is. The fact that they turned it over to Andrew Bynum instead of turning it over to Pau Gasol. And I'm just mystified of why this team turned away from Gasol as much as they did. They tried to trade him in the offseason. This guy, 2 years ago, Gasol was one of the top 10 players in the NBA. He was the Finals MVP. You could argue that he was as vital as frankly as Kobe was in some of those in that championship run. He was really brilliant. He averaged 18 points and 11 rebounds a game. Got 4 on the offensive game. He blocked 2 shots. He's still, for a guy who's being maligned, pretty fabulous. 17 points, 10 rebounds a game, a block shot. Now he's dipped in his productivity, but they've changed who he is, and they used him completely wrong. Completely wrong. They used him as a third option. If the play breaks down to Bynum in the post or Kobe at the top, then we'll get to him. The reality is, watch how the Spurs use Tim Duncan. That's how you should be using Pau Gasol. Early picker in the pick and roll who either rolls or pops. Post-up player some of the time. He's still the 24th best post-up player in the NBA. Or as a ball mover. Gasol is a fabulous passer. Gasol has averaged 3.5 or more assists a game in every year since 2006. I'm not sure there's another big that does that. This guy's great. And he was totally misused. And they may try to move him. And then the question is, who's going to end up with him? And I think they're going to end up with a gem. He's going to go play in the Olympics this year for Spain, regain his mojo, and I would suspect he changes who he ends up on this year. Obviously the first question from a Jazz fan is, could we get him? Well, the question is what the Lakers' game plan is. If the Lakers were to just exercise the option on Bynum, and then decide to move Gasol for expiring contracts, they would have huge money available in a Chris Paul, Dwight Howard, potentially some other free agents available. James Harden year, I think. Serge Ibaka, I think, is in that year as well. So there's some angle where they may decide to do that. If they do that, we might be able to play into that game. Al Jefferson, to me, doesn't seem to fit anything they're doing when they already have the likes of a Andrew Bynum in the low post. So I'm not sure that's the right answer. But how far are you willing to go if you're the Jazz? 2 years of Gasol while you're if you suddenly were told these are all hypotheticals, but if you were suddenly told it's going to cost you Jefferson and Millsap, would you do it for Pau Gasol? My answer to that is yes, probably. I haven't really. If you're told it's going to take you Jefferson and Cantor, would you do it? If you were told it was going to take Favors and Jefferson, would you do it? You could do just Jefferson for Pau straight up. The Lakers get out from under the 13-14 year salary. The Jazz would put their first number on the board for 13-14. Excuse me, which would be Gasol's $19 million. Gasol at $19 million, the Jazz would have to trade $14 million of salary, or actually a little less, to get him. Jefferson's at 15 next year. Millsap's at 7. Cantor's at 4. You could do any of those combinations. Would you do that? Would you do a Jefferson Cantor for Pau? They might be interested, might be willing to do that. Who knows? Would you trade Gordon for Pau? For 2 years. I think you have to decide where you are as a franchise, what you think you're capable of. If you put Devin Harris, assuming you don't make a lot of other moves, Gordon Hayward, whoever your small forward is, if it's Alec already, I don't know. Pau Gasol and Derek Favors together, how good are you? Those are the questions you'd have to evaluate. If you can do, if you can do it without giving up Millsap, so then you have Pau and Favors with Millsap as your third big. Woo! Maybe you do move a Cantor. You might become pretty good at that point. All right, those are just speculative issues. I don't know if those could actually take place, but those are all the things that are out there. And, I get nervous about speculation in a lot of ways on some of these things because I think it can hurt the players we have on the team. It sounds like you're trying to move them, but I think we'll try to speculate when we can during the offseason because I think there's some value to it. Gordon Hayward. Previews have started. The first one is up on the board. Now, little history. If you don't want this, I did this last week, and you can go away now. Bye. See ya. So here's 1320 KFAN. If I'm understanding what's going on correctly, I hope I'm not wrong. I'm going to be very embarrassed. Kind of goes away as we know it tomorrow, becomes a simulcast if I have this right. I'm not really involved, so there's no reason for me to have it right, but I think I've got it. And it's, to me, maybe only to me, it's kind of an important day. 1320 KFAN in 1996. Give you a little background. I actually was fortunate enough. My dad worked at Stanford Business School at the time. He took a trip to Vietnam and some other Asian countries. I went, came back, sleep deprived, came back on the first day, and the headline in the Salt Lake Tribune said, 570 kisses jazz, kissing jazz goodbye. We were 570 KSN with the great late Chris Tunis, and they had come to the Jazz were moving to a new station, 1320. I came back from my trip like, what happened? About, within 24 hours, I got a phone call. Would you come? Would you be interested to come be the program director? I was 25 years old at the time. I was not qualified at all for that job, and actually said no twice. Was too scared to do it, frankly. It took an old friend who was my first ever general manager in radio, who ironically enough is, I don't know if this is public, so hopefully I'm not blowing this, is, I believe, the new general manager for the new radio stations. From what I'm hearing, Randy Rogers. And I called him up. He had been my GM before in a previous job, and I said to him, what do you think? He said, you got to take it. So I took it. I had no idea what I was doing, and there were a bunch of brilliant people who had to live the wrath of me having no idea what I was doing, from Brian and Linda Schott to John Lundy and Furness, to Kevin Graham, to Gordon Monson, to Craig Bolerjack, to David James, to Tim Benz is a name you may not remember, to Eric Ray, to intern Mark Armstrong, who's turned out to be a TV personality in North Carolina, to Mike Yount, who's a writer around town. Now, we had an abundance of talent. I hope I said Eric Ray's name. I'm forgetting people, but I mean, we just had this incredible group, and I had no idea what I was doing trying to lead it. Chris Herbst came from the Sporting News Radio Network to host our morning show for a little while. And then Kevin and Gordon took over after that. I did stupid things like not hiring Patrick Kinahan, who was incredibly talented, and I missed it. And somewhat with great leadership by Scott Mahalik, who's a radio genius, and the Citadel Radio Group. And there were just so many great people in this building. That's not what this is about. I mean, there was Diane Curtis, Captain Worthington, Terry Mathis. I mean, there was just people everywhere. And I was this kid. I had no idea what we were doing. We had no idea. Nobody had really done sports radio the way a major market had done it. We'd done it very much out of the old Chris Tunis KSL News magazine. We hadn't jumped anything. The closest was kind of this renegade station, 106.5, The Score with Barry King. You may recall that. So anyway, we built the station up. It was great. We did well. I mean, there's a plaque somewhere in my office for number one sports radio rated station in the country. We got lucky. The Utes went to the Final Four. BYU went to the Cotton Bowl covering Sark and Kaipo McGuire and KO in that with was Rob Morris, I think, was a linebacker on that team that following Andre Miller's career up into the point where he's at that podium in San Antonio at the Final Four was amazing. Hijacking Craig Bolerjack as he went to national CBS and bringing him over to 1320 KFAN was a huge thrill. There's just so many amazing days in that. And then there's the historic blow-up between Karl Malone and Tom Nasalki and I, where Malone calls Nasalki a shade tree coach and me a Jim Rome wannabe. Larry H. Miller backing me in that circumstance, probably the reason I'm here today, because then when he called again, it was hard to say no. So anyway, I mean, just crazy days. We came number one in the country. We had the huge ratings, unbelievable, and frankly for me personally, then it was time to go. That's then when Eric Ray and John Lund did a great job running 1320 KFAN, but then some weird decisions were made. Jeff Rickert became the program director. They basically lowballed Craig Bolerjack and Gordon Monson. Come on. And they went over and started a new sports radio station called 1280 The Zone. And just now and then Ian Furness went over there and I think became the first program director. I actually consulted them for a little while. And think about the full cycle here that all of a sudden, in now it's all going to 1280 The Zone, and it was Bolerjack and Monson that built this thing from the beginning with the Inverness going over and just kind of a run of talent away from 1320 to 1280. Kevin Graham, who had been my assistant program director, who is the premier radio sports programmer in the country, unbelievable, circled from Columbus to Pittsburgh to Detroit and back to New York and Detroit, and then back to Salt Lake City in the midst of all of that. As when Ian Furness went to Seattle, to actually to Portland, and then end up in Seattle taking the job that I had, that I left to come. Craziness. 1320 KFAN stayed afloat. Ben Bagley and Tony Parks did where two of the guys, along with Lemma and some other guys, I probably don't know all of it, held it together. If you actually go back and look at some of the numbers, Bagley did a really nice job during that time period on a station that didn't have a lot of resources and kept it afloat. Did nice work. Scott Gerard enters into the picture and now is a stalwart in the radio, in the cycles of generations of radio, and becomes kind of the next generation as Scotty becomes the program director. And then DJ and PK, who have always been the guys that led you to, they're the difference makers. They are the Kevin Durant's and the Kobe Bryant's, though they're not old, the Michael Jordans of the Salt Lake radio world. Wherever they are has won. And it's really been that simple throughout this process, that wherever DJ and PK are, they have won. And I hope everyone realizes that for all the stuff people give PK. In his 10 years with DJ, wherever he is, they win. And so they were at 1280, if I have it all correct, and 1320 KFAN and the Jazz. Jazz took over control of 1320 KFAN again. They had relinquished control kind of in those days that went down. The Jazz decided they couldn't afford to have a station not doing well, so the first thing you do is you go get DJ and PK. I remember watching the Florida-Ohio State NCAA Finals game in San Antonio, ironically enough, back to San Antonio, where on television I was with the Sonics. I was the radio voice, and my phone rang. It was Randy Rigby. What do you think about coming back? And there were some reasons why it didn't work at that exact moment. We talked about it. They made me an amazing offer. The Sonics were in the midst of their their arena thing. I felt bad. I'd been given a shot. And I just couldn't do it. At that moment, I felt like it was too much of a disservice to the people who had faith in me and to the fans of Seattle while they're in the midst of an arena thing. The Oklahoma City Thunder group was nice enough to then fire me, which allowed me to go. And it's turned out for me, obviously, beautifully. And then 1320 KFAN comes back. Again, they have DJ and PK at the helm as the power brokers. And Bowler and I combined with Scotty G for a great fun year. Hopefully I did my job as the afternoon drive host. Bagley establishes himself as a real name in the market. Scott Gerard developing that next I'm the old guy now. Those are the 30-year-olds. I'm the 40-year-olds as the next generation of guys putting this thing together. And some really, for me, I will say some stiff competition. Kevin Graham and Gordon Monson going head-to-head every day. When they were on 1280 and I was on 1320, that had me warmed up and ready every day because I knew if I slipped, they would bury me on that day. The competition still exists with the 1280 crew. Now Bill Riley over at 700. I mean, it's just been a crazy radio world. And here we go again. Now, evidently, the next switch is back to 1280. That's where they'll be the home of the Utah Jazz. Hopefully giving you it's so hard. The management tries to make this decision to get a better signal, get better control, get you better access. One guy who lives in Centerville might be really different than the guy who lives in Logan. I think if you live in Logan, this is an amazing thing for you because I think you get some of the stations better than maybe you would before. I think if you live some other places, hopefully it's not a problem, and the Jazz have it covered, and these signals are great as I think we'll be able to AM and FM the Utah Jazz broadcast, but I don't know that for certain. I'm hoping. So anyway, that's where we stand, and today is somewhat of a historic day with the button pushing as it is. I believe it all changes tomorrow. I don't know what the lineups are. I'm not in the loop, but just as someone who, frankly, has great pride in this little group that 1320 KFAN and what it was that as the first employee ever in about 1996. I'd say probably June or July of 1996. Kevin Graham and I sat up in a house in Big Cottonwood Canyon on a deck for a weekend building this radio station. I got hired, and I said I'll only do it if I get Kevin Graham along with me. And the two of us sat up for 48 hours straight, just building every second. We slept like 3 hours, woke back up, and just in a summit of what is sports radio, what do we want to do, what is our lineup, what is our signature, how are we going to do this. It's one of the greatest life experiences I've ever had. So to see 1320 KFAN will probably not go away. It'll just be a different rendition under a different group if, in fact, Cumulus stays with sports. I don't know if that's their plan or not. But as a Jazz-run and Jazz-involved station, it comes, and it's got a lot of stuff for me as I was, it was interesting. The day I went off the air, when they brought in Spence to replace Scott Bowler and I, and allow me to go to do this, what I kind of envision and how I see this taking place, and how you can become the connector to one sports fan base. It was a very emotional day. It kind of went without any fanfare, but it was a very emotional day for me to walk out of that studio, realizing never to be on the air again, and wanting to understand, just because it's the right thing and it's what you want doesn't always make it easy. And it was wild. So today's just another one. I'll flip on the station today, listen to Scotty and Spence as they sign off today at 7 o'clock, and realize if I understand what's happening correctly, it's all different tomorrow. And it's been a wild, crazy ride, and I just feel very blessed to have been a part of much of it. Watched some from the sideline, and really the closest friends I have in this world, Ian Furness and Kevin Graham and Scott Gerard and I think are that close. DJ and PK and Bags, and different points in my life. Bowler, it's unspoken how much I admire and learn from him, and Gordon. It's neat. These are the close friends I've had in my life, and it's all been based on that little building at 434 Bearcat Drive when we all started it back in '96. Another name I didn't mention in here, and I can't believe this, I will shut up, is Ryan Hatch. Became our third employee at 1320 KFAN as a 16-year-old Skyline High School kid. He later became Afternoon Drive host. He's now a huge corporate radio guy. I can't believe I blew that. I almost feel like I should go back and record the whole thing. So just really neat time, neat people. It's not going to end. It's just going to move places. I may be being very, about something that's a non-issue to most of you. You'll just tune in to 1280, get the same excellence you've been receiving. And I hope you also, the other thing I would just say, I know some people rant and rave, and there was a guy who went on a 9-part rant on Twitter last night. But I just want to make sure you guys know that I've worked in a top 12, top 10 market, and they're brilliant. I mean, they're really good. The guys in Seattle are really good. The guys here are as good. DJ and PK could make their name in any top 10 market in the country. They're that good, and you've got great talent floating around this market, and you've got some real emerging guys. I mean, if Scott Gerard got free reign and got let to go do his job without having me and Bowler screwing it up all the time, I really think he's developing. And Bagley is fabulous at being on point with his topics. And these guys are, they're still young in the business, and there's exciting things coming. Very exciting things coming. Hope you enjoy it, and I look forward, in my little way, on this different little entity of modern broadcasting, to hopefully start a new trend, start a new thing, and also collaborate with those guys. So, all right, I'll be quiet now. See